The hospital corridor smelled of disinfectant and quiet tension, the kind that settles into the walls after long nights and difficult conversations. A young woman lay exhausted in her maternity bed, her body aching, her heart full, yet her eyes heavy with worry rather than joy. She had just given birth, a moment that should have been wrapped in warmth and celebration, but instead it had become the stage for a painful family confrontation. Her mother-in-law stood near the door, arms crossed, voice sharp and unforgiving, insisting that the new mother had no right to stay, no right to expect support, and no right to believe she truly belonged in this family. Each word landed like a blow, echoing in the small room, stripping the fragile happiness from the air. The accusations came fast and without mercy. She was told she was a burden, that she had trapped her son, that this child would only complicate things further. Nurses paused outside, unsure whether to intervene, while the young woman clutched the edge of the blanket, fighting tears. She felt abandoned not just by her husband, who was nowhere to be seen, but by the future she thought she was building. Her mother-in-law's final words cut deepest, telling her to leave the hospital as soon as possible, to go somewhere else, anywhere else, because she was no longer welcome. It was as if the very ground beneath her had been pulled away. Then, just as the tension reached its breaking point, footsteps approached the doorway. A man entered the room calmly, his presence instantly shifting the balance. He was unexpected, someone the mother-in-law had not anticipated seeing there. His face was composed, but his eyes carried authority and quiet resolve. When he spoke, his voice was steady, firm, and impossible to ignore. He addressed the mother-in-law directly, challenging her words, questioning her cruelty, and reminding her that this moment was about compassion, not control. The room fell silent. The mother-in-law, so confident just seconds earlier, stood frozen, unable to respond. The power she thought she held evaporated in an instant. The unexpected guest made it clear that the young woman was not alone, that she had rights, dignity, and support. He spoke of responsibility, of family meaning more than blood and ego, of how words spoken in moments like these could scar someone forever. The mother-in-law's expression shifted from anger to disbelief, then to a stunned quiet. She had not expected resistance, especially not from someone whose opinion carried weight. Without another word, she turned and left the room, her footsteps hurried and unsteady, leaving behind a silence that felt strangely peaceful. As the door closed, the young woman finally allowed herself to breathe. Tears flowed freely now, not from pain but from relief. For the first time since the confrontation began, she felt seen and protected. The unexpected guest offered reassurance, reminding her that her worth did not depend on anyone else's approval. In that moment, the hospital room transformed from a battleground into a place of healing. The baby slept peacefully beside her, unaware of the storm that had just passed, symbolizing hope and a new beginning. Far away from the quiet intensity of that hospital room, another kind of confrontation was unfolding under bright studio lights. On a popular daytime talk show, the atmosphere was anything but calm. What began as a routine discussion quickly escalated into a fiery exchange that stunned both the audience and viewers at home. Kevin Bacon, known for his composed demeanor and thoughtful interviews, found himself pushed to a breaking point during a heated conversation with Joy Behar. The topic touched on deeply personal beliefs and experiences, and as the debate intensified, the tension became impossible to ignore. Joy Behar pressed her point relentlessly, interrupting and challenging Bacon's statements with sharp commentary. At first, he tried to respond calmly, choosing his words carefully, attempting to keep the discussion respectful. But as the interruptions continued and his perspective was repeatedly dismissed, his frustration became visible. His posture stiffened, his voice grew firmer, and the easygoing charm audiences expected gave way to raw emotion. It was clear this was no longer just a television debate, but a moment where personal boundaries were being tested. When Kevin Bacon finally erupted, it wasn't with insults or theatrics, but with passionate clarity. He spoke about the importance of listening, about respecting lived experiences, and about how dismissive conversations only deepen divides. His words cut through the noise, forcing the room to pause. The audience grew quiet, sensing they were witnessing something unscripted and genuine. Even Joy Behar appeared momentarily taken aback, as Bacon asserted his right to speak without being talked over or reduced to a caricature of his views. The exchange highlighted a larger issue that resonates far beyond a single television set. It exposed how easily conversations can turn confrontational when empathy is lost, and how powerful it can be when someone refuses to stay silent in the face of dismissal. Much like the unexpected guest in the hospital room, Kevin Bacon's eruption was less about anger and more about reclaiming respect. It was a reminder that standing up for oneself, even in uncomfortable or public settings, can shift the dynamic entirely. In both stories, the core truth remains the same. Whether in a quiet maternity ward or a loud television studio, moments of confrontation reveal character. They show who seeks to dominate and who chooses to protect, who silences and who speaks up. The young mother learned that support can come from unexpected places, and Kevin Bacon demonstrated that even under scrutiny, dignity and conviction matter. These moments, though vastly different in setting, share a common thread of resilience, reminding us that silence is not always strength. And sometimes, the most powerful change begins when someone finally says enough. The night at the maternity hospital was supposed to be quiet, filled with the soft beeping of monitors and the gentle rhythm of newborn breaths. Instead, the room became heavy with tension as harsh words cut through the fragile calm. The young mother lay weak but alert, her body still recovering from childbirth, her emotions raw and unguarded. Standing over her was the last person she wanted to see in that moment, her mother-in-law, whose presence carried judgment instead of comfort. What should have been a moment of family unity turned into an emotional trial that felt cruel and unnecessary. The mother-in-law's voice was cold, each sentence sharpened by resentment. She accused the new mother of ruining her son's life, of bringing shame instead of joy, and of being nothing more than a temporary mistake. The words echoed painfully, louder than the hospital machines, louder than the quiet cries of the baby resting nearby. Nurses hovered at a distance, trained to respect family privacy, yet clearly aware that something was wrong. The young woman felt trapped, too exhausted to argue, too shocked to defend herself. Her heart raced as she wondered how love could vanish so completely at the very moment it was supposed to grow. As the confrontation escalated, the mother-in-law demanded that the young woman leave the hospital as soon as possible. She insisted there was no place for her in their family and no future waiting for her beyond this room. The cruelty of it was overwhelming. The young mother stared at the ceiling, blinking back tears, trying to stay strong for the child she had just brought into the world. She felt abandoned, not only by her husband, who had yet to appear, but by the promises that once made her believe she belonged. Then came the sound of footsteps, steady and deliberate. A man entered the room without raising his voice or forcing his presence, yet everything changed the moment he spoke. He was someone the mother-in-law recognized immediately, someone whose authority could not be dismissed. His calm tone contrasted sharply with the hostility that had filled the room moments earlier. He addressed the situation with clarity, calling out the cruelty for what it was and reminding everyone present that compassion mattered most in moments like these. The mother-in-law tried to interrupt, but her confidence faltered. The unexpected guest spoke about responsibility, about how family bonds were strengthened by kindness, not control. He reminded her that the woman in the bed was vulnerable, recovering, and deserving of dignity. His words landed firmly, leaving no room for argument. The room grew silent, the tension dissolving into stunned disbelief. For the first time, the mother-in-law had nothing to say. She stood motionless, her authority stripped away, before finally turning and leaving without another word. In the aftermath, the young mother felt a wave of relief wash over her. Tears streamed freely now, not from humiliation, but from gratitude. She was no longer alone. The unexpected guest reassured her gently, telling her that strength sometimes comes from those we least expect. As the baby slept peacefully, the room felt lighter, filled with the quiet promise of healing. That night marked a turning point, a moment when cruelty was met with courage and silence was replaced by support. Elsewhere, in a completely different setting, another confrontation was unfolding, this one under bright lights and in front of millions. A popular daytime talk show buzzed with energy as discussions shifted from polite debate to heated disagreement. Kevin Bacon sat among the hosts, initially relaxed, prepared for conversation, not conflict. Across from him, Joy Behar challenged his viewpoints with sharp humor and relentless questioning. What began as spirited dialogue quickly intensified, creating an atmosphere thick with tension. As the exchange continued, interruptions piled up. Bacon attempted to explain his perspective, choosing words carefully, but found himself repeatedly talked over. The audience sensed the shift, the moment when patience gave way to frustration. His expression changed, his posture straightened, and his voice gained a firmness that demanded attention. This was no rehearsed outburst, but a reaction born from feeling dismissed and misunderstood. When Bacon finally spoke with force, the studio fell quiet. He didn't shout, but his words carried weight. He spoke about respect, about the importance of listening rather than overpowering, and about how real conversations require space for differing experiences. The intensity of his response stunned the room. For a brief moment, the usual rhythm of television banter stopped, replaced by something raw and honest. Joy Behar appeared surprised, and the audience leaned in, aware they were witnessing an unscripted moment of truth. The confrontation resonated because it reflected a broader cultural tension. It highlighted how easily dialogue can become confrontational when empathy disappears. Bacon's eruption was not about winning an argument, but about reclaiming his voice. Much like the unexpected guest in the hospital, he shifted the balance simply by refusing to remain silent. The power of that moment lay in its authenticity, reminding viewers that respect is not optional, even in disagreement. Both stories, though worlds apart, share a powerful connection. In one, a vulnerable mother found protection at her lowest moment. In the other, a public figure asserted dignity under pressure. Each confrontation revealed how quickly power can change hands when someone stands up against cruelty or dismissal. They show that silence can be broken, that respect can be demanded, and that even the most tense situations can transform when courage steps forward. These moments remind us that strength often appears unexpectedly, and when it does, it has the power to change everything.